Something strange happens when people owe money. Not when they owe a lot. When they owe any. Because the moment a debt appears, something invisible enters the room. And from that point forward, every decision starts orbiting around it. The strange part? Most people never notice. They think debt is just a number, a balance, a monthly payment, a line on a statement they barely read. But if debt were just a number, two people with the exact same income wouldn't live completely different lives simply because one owes money and the other doesn't. Yet they do, and the gap becomes enormous. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If debt is only money, why does it have so much power? Most people believe debt is a tool. Borrow now, pay later. Simple. That's the explanation everyone accepts. But that isn't the full story, because debt behaves less like a financial product and more like an invisible force that slowly changes how people think. To see it, we need to start at the bottom. Zero debt. The place almost everyone believes is the finish line. No loans, no credit card balances, no monthly payments, no collectors, no reminders, nothing. Sounds perfect, and for many people, it is. But here's where things become interesting. At zero debt, something exists that people rarely appreciate until it's gone. Optionality. The ability to say no. No to a bad job. No to a terrible boss. No to moving somewhere you hate. No to working weekends. No to panic. Debt-free people don't necessarily have more money. What they often have is more freedom. And freedom is difficult to measure because it never appears on a bank statement, which leads to something even stranger. The moment debt enters the picture, freedom starts getting priced. A small credit card balance, maybe $1,000, maybe $5,000. Nothing dramatic. Most people barely notice. Life feels the same. Payments are manageable. Everything appears normal. But a subtle shift has occurred. Future income has already been assigned a job. Money you haven't earned yet already belongs to someone else. That's an odd concept when you really think about it. Imagine eating next week's dinner today. That's essentially what borrowing is. Useful? Sometimes. Dangerous? Potentially. Because now every paycheck arrives smaller than it looks. And that's where the psychology begins. Not the math. The psychology. Debt introduces urgency. Suddenly, every decision has a deadline attached to it. The minimum payment, the due date, the next statement, the next bill. It's not crushing. Not yet. It's just always there. Like a mosquito in a dark room. You can ignore it, but you can't completely forget it. Then comes the next level. $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, student loans, car loans, personal loans. The kind of debt society considers normal, and that's important. Because normal debt is often the hardest debt to question. Nobody panics when they see it. Friends have it. Family has it. Co-workers have it. Entire industries depend on it. The system doesn't treat this debt like an emergency. It treats it like adulthood. But that creates another question. If debt is so normal, why does everyone seem stressed? Because debt doesn't merely consume money, it consumes flexibility. A person with no debt can lose a job. A person with large obligations loses more than income. They lose time. Every month becomes a countdown, and countdowns change behavior. People stay longer in jobs they hate, delay risks, postpone dreams, accept situations they otherwise wouldn't. Not because they're weak, because the math leaves fewer exits. The strangest part? The debt itself isn't forcing these decisions. The possibility of consequences is. Debt is one of the few things that can control people without physically touching them. A remarkably efficient system when you think about it. Then comes six figures, the level where debt stops feeling like an inconvenience and starts feeling like infrastructure. Mortgages, business loans, professional degrees, large commitments. At this stage, something surprising happens. The people carrying the biggest balances aren't always struggling. Sometimes they're thriving. And now the story becomes confusing. Because we've been told debt is dangerous, yet some wealthy people intentionally borrow enormous amounts. Why? Here's where the first layer of the mystery begins to crack. Poor debt and rich debt often look identical on paper. Both are loans. Both charge interest. Both create obligations. But they operate differently. One is used to buy consumption. The other is often used to acquire assets. One removes cash. The other can generate cash. Same tool, different game. And that's when everything changes. Because debt isn't really divided by size, it's divided by purpose. A $5,000 vacation loan and a $500,000 apartment building loan may share the same